OP11 meta is right around the corner, and with EBO2 behind us, it looks like there's a couple of meta games in a row now where Nami just hasn't been good. It doesn't mean that we haven't found success in some ways. Adaptations have been made, notably in EBO2, we've adopted Cavendish and the return of Nojiko, but in the blue-purple Luffy meta, it may just get worse. And what I want to do in this video is explore not only why, but maybe find some adaptations that us mill players can use. Not only am I gonna try to solve what's going on, but I also am going to point out that I may not be the ultimate voice for it. I want to be that standing off point, that jump off into the abyss that is the meta of OP11. You ultimately need to take what I have and still test on your end. There might be a card that I'm missing. There might be a key interaction that I'm not thinking of. And in this video, we're not only going to explore different deck lists that I've come up with for Nami and have played in the past, but also go over some cards that I think may be strong, but also why certain other cards might not be, by looking at blue purple Luffy itself, why this deck is really powerful specifically against Nami, and what are the decisions we need to make in this metagame to even succeed with our favorite mill leader. Now, this is the type of video that I do every so often. If you want to see more long form videos like this where it's not just gameplay, leave a like down below, let me know what you want to see, and of course let me know in the comments especially how you're feeling about OP11 meta. Are you still going to be playing Nami? Are you still playing the favorite mill leader we have, or are you trying out other leaders, and why? Notably, as I've said, this leader is going to struggle with this metagame of just 3 Luffys at the top and a little bit of aggro in Zoro and Betty. It's going to be a little tough. Now, these aggro decks look to get underneath the Monkey D. Luffy, just trying to be faster and pressure before they can start playing 2 cards a turn to the point where it almost doesn't matter. But in terms of the other decks, we still have Teach and Lucci up there. The West really does like their Teach and their Lucci, so I imagine that might change a little bit going into this metagame, but we'll see how ultimately things line up for the West version of this meta. But it doesn't mean that Nami's going to get any better. Again, it does mean that we can make adaptations. You can see that like in tier 3, there are decks, even in tier 2, that we have like a relatively okay matchup into, but still, if Bello, Betty, and Zoro are going to be at the top as well, we're going to struggle a lot against the aggro potentiality of it all. Now, Monkey D. Luffy, for those of you that aren't maybe as initiated, haven't been paying attention to the East meta, the whole problem with this leader, so GP Luffy, think of it very much like a tempo-based aggro leader. Once it got its pieces out, once it gets its Sanji and Pudding, it just skyrockets from there. Once you play a second one, you're just able to play like multiple Rush Luffys and just manage your Dawn in an insane amount of advantage. Now, the purple blue Luffy version of this deck is 6k leader, 3 life. The life doesn't necessarily matter for us, although we might get into some interesting shenanigans with like 10 cost Kaido. I think specifically this leader becomes problematic in the late game because of its ability to kind of play that like stall game, but kind of proactively. So a big play pattern that we saw in the yellow matchups was sometimes the yellow decks would play this play pattern of starving, where it wouldn't attack you, but just play out big threats and pass the turn. And once it filled out its board with a bunch of attacks, it would just start swinging large for like maybe 11 and force you to have multiple pieces of cards to be able to deal with the wide board, which ultimately that's a winning strategy for them. But the thing is with Luffy, because it draws 2 cards a turn, essentially finds one off the top and is able to set up top or bottom, it sets off some insane plays to the point where it's able to just cheat out multiple big bodies at a time while creating huge swings of value. Notably, a deck list like this, really the interactions that you're looking for, primarily, you're looking at Mr. 2 or Zoro in the early game for characters that can ramp out, and then you're also looking for something like Gear 2. Maybe they're on the play on their 3 Dawn turn, they tap this out, go to 4, untap to 6, and at that point, the turn after that, they go to 8 and they're off to the races. Notably, blue purple Luffy's ability to draw 2 cards specifically triggers if you go to your turn and you're at 8. Not that you go to your turn, you're at 6, go to 8, then it triggers. It triggers before you add your Dawn. So it doesn't trigger on the 6 Dawn turn. That's one thing to note if you're not used to playing against this leader. The crazy thing that this leader can do is specifically with Sanji. What it wants to do is specifically it draws Sanji. So it uses its leader ability to find the Sanji. Then it's going to set up the next batch of cards on top of its life to be able to then cheat out maybe a Charlotte Linlin, maybe cheat out Rush Luffy, something like Mihawk if it wants to be defensive, maybe Katakuri, just these massive insane threats, or if it wants to get aggressive, something like 9-cost Rush Luffy. So a lot of big things over and over and over again just to be able to stall out the game. Linlin provides some heal, Draco Mihawk some aggression, these two Rush Luffy's, Mihawk some removal, these two some more aggression, and Katakuri some defense. It really does have it all, alongside a package of removal with God Thread, being able to get rid of maybe some threats like Cavendish, Red Rock being able to get rid of some of our threats as well if we wanted to start playing stuff like Zeph, and even Gravity Blade off tempoing us, taking away not only blockers but maybe Kaya's and Nami's that we're looking to take advantage of. This deck really does do everything perfectly, alongside some number of 0 to 2 copies of Charlotte Pudding. It can really play some tricky things if we're not being careful with how greedy we're getting with our hand and how many Pilas we're ripping off just to find any amount of interaction to be able to slow this deck down. Now that's what this deck list is trying to do against us. A lot of great things against Nami, just being able to play out its regular game plan, not even having to tech against Nami. It's just going to be really good. So how does our favorite mill leader play against this? And really, it's going to be tough off the bat. Right? Let's be honest here. There's no silver bullet OP11 card in blue that's just going to be able to help us. A lot of the cards that have been printed are relatively leader locked or well designed in that aspect. Nami does kind of, in many ways, a lot of people say Nami does limit that design, but I would argue it actually promotes better design because it helps the leader specifically, whereas the other colors are generally just able to find cards like Moria and stuff that are universally used throughout many leaders. Blue has more succinct kind of help leaders, which may limit design in some other ones, but that's an overall commentary on the lack of good design in this game. With that in mind, let's go into some deck lists. So firstly, this right here, if I just kind of move my camera down, this is a deck list from EBO2. Now, notably, throughout this week, I'm going to be playing a whole bunch of deck lists. I'm going to be going over some EBO2 deck lists and some new variations that I'm going to try out today. And I want to go over one card specifically that I'm not going to be trying that might be worth the memes. But regardless, this is EBO2, and really what I want to test is this deck list specifically okay against something like the blue-purple Luffy deck list. First of all, I'm going to be straight up with you. Probably not. As I mentioned, with God Thread and the various amount of removals that it has, it's hard to justify Cavendish, especially as a brick in your hand. If you're able to get it in and you're able to attack with it, it's really powerful. You're not clearing anything, but that extra reach on that turn where you draw for turn, attack with Cavendish, and you're able to draw 2 more cards is really powerful. And the Nojiko largely isn't going to be that relevant other than bouncing Uso, Hachi, and Nami, which if you can do that, that's great, but at least the Nami is a East Blue target for the Apis to be able to get something out of your deck. And if you draw it, is at least a counter. So it's not the worst thing in the world. Relatively speaking, though, I just don't think this EBO2 deck list is going to be able to translate that well into this new metagame if the top of the metagame is just going to be aggro and Luffy deck list. GP Luffy is still there. This deck list can work against that, but that's not the deck list that we're looking to metagame against. Now, the next deck list that I want to highlight specifically is going to be more of a control one. Now, shout out to Nikaido TCG, who took a bit of a break from Nami and the OPTCG in general, come back. They actually came up like top 64, I think 53rd place specifically in a tournament with a similar list. This isn't one for one. I believe they had Brickfist in their list as well, but I kind of like the idea of Jozu. So you may return one of your characters other than this card to your hand, return up to 1 6-cost or lower character to its original player's hand. What I like about this is that this could be all in to either, bounce your Kaya and or your Apis back to your hand, but also there's some decent interaction in it's like a weird Nojiko where instead of just costing 2 to tempo them out, you can play this on 6 and bounce your Kaya or bounce your Apis back to your hand for additional counter, and then bounce maybe something like a 5-cost Nami on this side. This is a slower deck list. At least what I will say is Jozu is a counter out of your hand. Again, this was a better card in the GP Luffy meta, but still has angles against that. Notably, I'm not playing Cavendish. I do like the idea of having a card that attacks and can clear out of the board. At worst here, Draco Mihawk is at least a 2k out of hand. That's not really searchable because it's 7 Warlords, but does attack, draw 2, trash 2, feeds your yard a little bit, but also does feeding yard if that matters for something like if you're playing Mr. 1, but notably does again draw through your deck like Cavendish. I'm playing a 1 of Deathwing just cuz, and specifically I think like bigger counters are going to be more important than ever. A lot of blue purple Luffy players will start swinging 11s, which is going to be generally the good number to swing at if you have large bodies into Nami. It forces a 4 and a 2k out, pretty much making it so you can't use those two. You have to have like a 4 and a 4. It forces a lot of cards out of your hand to just swing 11, and this is a deck list that blue purple Luffy specifically can do that. So this is a little slower, plays a lot of the regular pieces, but is an adaptation or a quote unquote evolution of the EBO2 deck list. Next up, the last thing that I want to try specifically, or not the last thing I should say, not this list. The next thing I want to try is going back to the Kuja Pirates. You always want to keep defaulting. This is like the latest evolution of this deck list past the old Impel Down hybrid with like Zeph and stuff. Bringing this back because you do get to actively continue to search through your deck. Margaret can act as a blocker if they don't have the Gravity Blade, if they don't have the bounce on them, the Mihawk. It's just nice to be able to continue to play out a bunch of cards and be a little proactive while digging through for snake dances and 2k counters. So there is merit to this to be able to continuously bounce something like Gloriosa and continue to find your other options. I want to still try this. There are elements of blue purple Luffy that are kind of slow. So if you're able to take advantage of that in the early game, sit your hand up full of a bunch of good cards, then maybe later down the line you're able to counter out in the later turn. So Kuja Nami is something I still want to try. The last thing I want to try is going back to the Impel Down package. Now, specifically, this is because of the high counter value of something like Deathwing. I'm going fully into it, bringing back Buggy, Mr. 1, Searchable 2K, and Mr. 2, but also still playing the Nami to be able to find our Impel Downs and our Gavels to be able to empty our hand for our Deathwings. Mr. 1 is going to be key to that, to be able to recur our Gavels and continue to move through our deck while finding our Deathwings and enabling a smaller hand size. So I want to try all 4 of these deck lists this week. We're going to specifically be, as much as possible, trying them against the blue purple Luffy matchup. It might be a little hard. Not everyone might be playing it, or not everyone might be interested in playing up against Nami specifically, but we're going to try and get as many games as possible against blue purple Luffy. If you'd like to help me, join the Nami Discord down below if you're a decent kind of blue purple Luffy player. If you're okay with playing some stock lists against me, I'd love to play with you just to record for some games. We're here to learn and get better as a Nami collective here, and I would love to, if not cement how bad that matchup is for us, maybe show some ways where we can improve it. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. How would you approach the blue purple Luffy matchup? Is it just wholly impossible? We should be trying something else. Or is there like a secret tech card that I'm missing? Notably, 10 cost Kaido is like a funny one. So if they don't play something like the 9 Mom to heal them, 10 cost Kaido, if your opponent's at 3 or less life, you just dropped 4 cards. It's 10 Dawn, draw 4 cards. It's not a counter in your hand. It's a funny little meme. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. If you play this, you have to play like more of the 0 counter. So it would be search up Impel. It would be this Gum Gum Rain. So you want to make sure you're playing plenty of Gum Gum Rains to be able to draw into them and at least have counters out of your like hand. But even then, it's not the best thing in the world. Regardless, it's a meme. It's possible. Let me know if I'm missing anything. And I'd love to see what you're doing with Nami in OP11.